Santhya is going to complement this. Complements is a simpler topic, and complements, no? Yeah, yeah. Suddenly her name came up. Vincita's slide came up. Yeah, so complementing the complements, she will, and complements is extremely important because now more and more complemented directed therapies are coming up. Avocapan and other stuff is coming up.
So let us start off with some basic facts. So this complement is the first pattern recognition receptor to be identified, and this is a very ancient system. How ancient? Only 1 billion years old. And it consists of more than 50 proteins and glycoproteins, mostly produced by the liver, and they act extracellularly. And the constituents are zymogens, which means that they are inactive proteins which can get activated and form an enzymatic cascade. The end result is protein fragments that activate complement receptors on immune and other cells. So this is what we are going to learn today. And as soon as you see something like this, what you want to do is shut down your brain and run away, escape. Okay? But this is not, it's not that only we are feeling. After a complement meeting, the summary concluded by saying this, that most immunologists think that complement is baffling or irrelevant or most conveniently both. And this may be important even only as an elegant model system. But that is far from the truth. And I would like to say this is the greatest underdog story in immunology. It began, let us trace the history. This began in 1901 when Jules Bordet identified that this is complementary to antibodies. So how does it complement the action of antibodies? If you have a host membrane on which antibody has bound, you add complement, it will cause lysis of the membrane. So that is what he identified, and for this he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1990. Subsequently, it was identified that complement forms important part of innate. Then they said this will bridge the gap between innate and adaptive. But something happened in 2013 that changed the entire perspective of how we look at things. And then now we realize that this is, in fact, it may be central to immune and its actions may extend beyond immune. Now what happened in 2013? Stay with me, you will know at the end of this. So we need to know the pathways. There are 3 pathways, the classical, lectin and alternative pathway. So what triggers the classical pathway? Immune complexes containing IgM, IgG3, IgG1, apoptotic bodies, DNA, amyloid, C-reactive protein. Now, these will bind to the globular head of C1q. You can see that the initiator ones are in green. So C1q is the initiator one. And downstream of C1q, you have the proteases, that is C1r and C1s. Once this is activated, it will go and activate the next step, that is C4 and C2. The lectin pathway is activated by mannose, glucose, fucose, N-acetyl glucosamine, which are found on the pathogen surface. Now this would bind to mannose binding lectin, and here the protease is called MASP. Now, alternative pathway is very different from all this. So though it can be triggered by many PAMs and DAMs, what is most spectacular is that this is a tick over pathway. So what do we mean by C3 tick over? This means that C3 is continuously being produced and it is getting destroyed. Okay, so how does C3 get activated? When it undergoes hydrolysis, C3 gets activated, and then if you have factor B and factor D will cleave factor B. So you get BB, which is the active form, and that will bind to the hydrolyzed C3. That is, hydrolyzed C3 is given in blue because there is water. Okay, now stay with me. Before we go on to the continuation, let us see what is the practical implication. So what would happen if any of these components are, if there is a deficiency? So first, if the classical pathway components up to this stage are deficient, what do you expect? So you can see that it is binding to the immune complex, it is binding to apoptotic bodies, it is binding to DNA. So if it doesn't clear this, what would happen? Autoimmunity, very good. So here you have autoimmunity more than infections, whereas if you have deficiency of lectin and alternate pathway, you would get more of infections. Okay, now we move on, let us continue. So the next pathways are, next steps in these pathway is, you have the C3 convertase, you have the C5 convertase, then you have the membrane attack complex. Now let me start off from where I had left. So if you remember, there is C3BB, that is a hydrolyzed C3 which has bound to BB. What is the blue dotted circle around that, and who is C3BB? Anyone? So this is the fluid phase C3 convertase. So this is a surprise cameo appearance. So there are two C3 convertase in the alternate pathway. So this is the twin which is unstable. So it is locked up in the fluid phase. Okay. So, but it does a very important thing. It initiates the alternative pathway. How does it do that? It can activate, it can cleave C3 and you get C3b, and this C3b now can have multiple fates. If there is no pathogen available for binding, C3b will get destroyed. If you have a pathogen surface available, it will bind to C3b. The C3b will bind to the pathogen surface, and along with that, activated part of B, that is BB, will bind to that. Now this is on the pathogen surface. So this C3b BB is the membrane bound C3 convertase. So this is the real twin. And this is the one which is responsible for the amplification of the loop. Okay. Now third, what can happen to C3b? It is important for opsonization. Okay. That is binding to the pathogen surface and letting the phagocytes eat it up. Next, what else can happen to C3b? It will bind to the C3 convertase to go on to the next step, that is C5 convertase. Okay? So in the classical and lectin pathway, the C3 convertase is constituted by C4b, C2a. And now when C3b binds to this, you get the C5 convertase. In the alternate pathway, the C5 convertase consists of C3b, BB and another C3b. This will act on C5 and you get C5b. And this C5b associates with C6, 7, 8 and 9 and forms the membrane attack complex which causes lysis. The other products of this pathway are C3a and C5a, which will bind to the receptors on the host cells to trigger inflammation. Okay, now I want you to tell me which is the most important pathway of the three. It can be only one of three, so please. If anybody has said anything other than alternative pathway, I will get mad. If this has been in your life for the longest time, it is always sticking for you. Okay? Even when it has no receptors, it is ready to jump into your defense. It is first to respond in case of danger. If anybody causes the slightest damage to you, in its anger, it amplifies many-fold. And it generates 90% of the deposited C3b. So whoever produced C3 is immaterial. The amplification will be done by alternative pathway. So this is the mother of all pathways. Full stop. Okay? And million of C3b fragments are deposited on a single bacterium in less than 5 minutes. So the other thing we have to discuss here is, if the lytic pathway is deficient, which is the infection you can get? This is supposed to be an MCQ. Suppose you don't have the, I should phrase it again. If the MAC is deficient, what is the infection that you get? Okay, capsulated organism, be specific. Which organism? Very good. So, Neisseria meningitidis. But which is the pathway, which is the product when deficient causes the worst Neisseria meningitidis infection? So, this is in green. There is a reason why properdin is green. And if you see, I have copy-pasted properdin everywhere, even when it was not there. So, properdin deficiency causes the worst Neisseria meningitidis. And alternative pathway deficiency is associated with more infection. The other infections, as somebody rightly said, encapsulated organisms are infections are more common. That is, Streptococcus pneumoniae and H. influenza are seen. Okay, so the problem with this is an enzymatic cascade and it will cause lysis. So it is very important to protect the host cells. Otherwise, our cells are also going to get lysed. So who protects us? So you have the complement regulators, and the complement regulators can be membrane bound. They form a shield on the surface of the host cell, and you have soluble. So the different membrane bound regulators are CD35, CD46, CD55, and protectin, which is CD59. So for once they have done some good naming in rheumatology. CD59 easy to remember. It will block 5B to 9. So good. So at that level, other soluble products that are acting are vitronectin and clustrin. But what do you think is the most specific thing that has to be blocked? If you have to control this, where should you actually block? So you can see most regulators are there at that level. between the C3 convertase and C5 convertase. That is where it is very essential to block. So most of this, that is CR1, MCP, DAF, and soluble, you remember two, factor H and factor I. Okay, so these are acting at the level of C3b. So either they destroy C3b or they prevent C3b from binding to BB. Okay, or if it is already formed, C3b, BB is formed, you go and destroy. That is how it works. To tell how important this is, I will show you an example. So this is an RBC cell on which CD55 and 59 are lacking because the GPI anchor is defective. Okay, so what happens? You have uncontrolled complement activation on the RBC surface, and this uncontrolled RBC activation will lead to lysis. Which is this disease? Very good. And what will you target here? How will you treat this condition? Sorry? C5. So the antibody to C5 is called eculizumab. Fantastic. So next disease you have to know associated with complement dysregulation are associated with deficiency of factor H, factor I and MCP, two diseases in renal. One is atypical HUS, the other is C3 glomerulopathy. Now let us briefly talk about the complement receptors. So you have C1QR which binds to MBL and C1Q. You have C3b and C4b, remember these are opsonins. These bind to CR1. So you are expecting to see CR1 on the phagocytes. But CR1 is there on the RBC. There is a reason for it. Just hold on, we'll see. Now, CR2 is very important because it is found on the B lymphocyte. It is an important co-receptor for the B cell receptor. Now, CR3, CR4, CRIG, all of them bind to degradation products of C3b. And I have already told you about C3a, C5a. Okay, now if somebody asks you, that is all fine, but what does complement actually do? So complement is like a multitasking lady. So it sets things on fire without any reason. C3a, C5a, opsonization by C3b, silent clearance of immune complex and apoptotic bodies, and drills holes. That is the membrane attack complex. So some of these functions we need to see in detail. So how does opsonization of pathogens happen? So here you can see on microbe is coated and made delicious for the macrophage. So you have C3b, you have C1q, you have mannose binding lectin and immune complexes that is deposited. The receptors for these are found on the surface of macrophage, that is CR1, SINR1, C1q and FC receptors. And then this causes the macrophage to eat it up. And this process is enhanced by the C5a receptor. Now, the other important process is immune complex clearance. This we never think about. Lot of immune complex are formed in our body every day. If somebody doesn't clear, we would have extensive tissue damage. So how do you clear? First step, you make the immune complex soluble. How do you achieve that? Classical pathway activation, C3b and C4b gets deposited. Now it is soluble. Okay? Once it is soluble, you need to transport it to the liver for phagocytosis. So how do you move from one point to another? Uber. Okay. So RBCs are the Uber here. So how does it function as Uber? RBC have CR1. I told you it has a specific function. So RBC has CR1. So this will take the immunoglobulin, this complex to the liver for phagocytosis. Okay. The other thing is it tells the adaptive immunity whether you should react or not. So if suppose you have an apoptotic body. So there are different ways in which the macrophages and the dendritic cells can identify if this is an apoptotic body or not. I'm not getting into details of that, but once it identifies, you know that apoptotic bodies are bound by, who binds to the apoptotic bodies? C1q, okay? So C1q and also C3 degradation products are also there. So this would be recognized by the dendritic cell and the macrophages, and they would tell the adaptive immunity not to react. So the T cell will go into anti-inflammatory mode. But suppose they are not apoptotic bodies, the signal is to go into full-on war mode. Then other function, boosting the B cell receptor signaling. Here you can see the B cell receptor, and the B cell receptor has bound to the antigen. On the antigen, you have the complement pathway that is activated, C3d is deposited, and the receptor for the C3d is CD21, otherwise it's called complement receptor 2. Now this is an important co-stimulatory molecule, so it can lower the threshold of B cell receptor signaling by up to 10,000 fold. C3 and C5 I already said, anaphylatoxins, and they cause chemotaxis, oxidative burst, phagocytosis, and degranulation. And where do you characteristically see the effects of this? This is the example is ANCA vasculitis. So in ANCA vasculitis, you have this prime neutrophil. Prime neutrophil, it has got C5a receptor on its surface. It has ANCA antigen, and to which and it comes onto the surface so that ANCA, which is an antibody, can bind. This releases properdin. Properdin stimulates alternate pathway. And because of this, you have C5 that is generated, that will bind on C5a receptor. This will cause the neutrophil to become activated. Reactive oxygen species are released, transmigration happens, netosis happens, releases DNA, which will now activate classical pathway. Now, we have a therapeutic strategy. What was the therapeutic strategy? Wonderful. So you block C5a receptor, that is avacopan. Okay. So basically, physiologically complement has roles, pathologically it is relevant. Physiologically what it does, its main function is to take care of, is to remove infections, and it has, the regulators come into play when the host cells are involved or you need a non-inflammatory removal of modified host cells. Now pathologically what can go wrong? Pathologically now it has been found that some of the microorganisms have hijacked the complement regulators, and by doing that they escape from the complement system. Other examples we know, I already told you, if there is inappropriate action of regulators, you can get PNH, you can get HUS, you can get C3 glomerulopathy. And the other example is our favorite. So there is inefficient removal of modified host cells that can lead to the disease is lupus. Okay. So now tell me, what is this? See, to this crowd, I don't have to show SLE and ask, now what is this? So what is it? Give an intelligent answer. All these are young people, extensive skin disease. In the context of complements, answer. In the context of complements, these are all early complement deficiency. Okay? So what are the characteristic features of people who develop SLE because of early complement deficiency? Early onset disease less than 20 years, and in most cases anti-Ro is positive. Now higher you are in the hierarchy, more is the prevalence of lupus. For example, if you have C1q deficiency, the chance of getting lupus is 90%. C1q, C1rs and C4, they are, and you can see the female to male ratio is almost equal. Okay, they have very bad skin disease and they have nephritis, and in many of these cases anti-dsDNA is negative. And C2, luckily C2 is the most common deficiency, and luckily C2 deficiency, the chance of developing is SLE is only 10%, which is a good thing, and the renal disease is mild. And how to screen for complement deficiencies? We have functional assays, and we have to talk about complement paradox in lupus. What is that? So the paradox is partially resolved because now it is understood that the deficiency of the early complement predisposes to SLE deficiency, because the early complement is important to protect from lupus. However, the organ damage in SLE is due to the effect of the later complement products. And what you can see the immune complex here, and C1q has bound to the immune complex. Now imagine if anti-C1q binds to it, the C1q. Okay, so you have a larger molecule. If you have a larger molecule, it will precipitate. Where will maximum amount of precipitation happen? In the glomerulus. Okay, so that is no wonder that anti-C1q plus anti-dsDNA and low complements has the strongest association with renal involvement. Okay, so now this what you heard so far was the flashback. So we have completed this part of the story. Now we are in 2013. And so now I am going to tell you what happened in 2013. So the researchers working on this suddenly identified that the complements that were involved in signaling in the immune cells, these complements were generated not extracellularly, not from the liver, but it was created in an autocrine manner. And they looked still further, and then they were mind blown because they found that there is intracellular complement which is very active. And not only that, this intracellular complement signaling could control the basic cell physiological process. To give an example, it can regulate T cell metabolism and Th1 differentiation. So introducing the concept of ComplSO, and these have been identified in a variety of cell populations. This contributes to normal cell and organ development, homeostasis and tissue repair. And what is important for rheumatologists is that increased intracellular C3 can contribute to Th hyperactivity in all our Th1 mediated diseases, and this has a therapeutic target as well. Now, Complement is important in many diseases, and in these diseases marked in red, which I have boxed, it has been found that complement is the main driver of the pathogenesis, and in all these diseases, complement-related therapeutics are in use. Okay? So with that, I come to the end, and what I would like to tell you is, this may be the end of my presentation, but as far as the complement story is concerned, this is the high interval point, and I thank you all for patient listening, and remember the story continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Santa. This is a high energy talk and a lot of learning. Thanks a lot. Any questions? Couple of questions maybe we can allow. Anybody wants to add anything? Huh? Yeah. Avocapan for Sjogren's and lupus. Do you think it will work? Why is complement so important in lupus? Will avocapan be a steroid sparing in lupus? Where it will work?
I think it is mainly they are targeting the downstream, and you have to look at diseases where the C5a receptor has a very important role to play. And that among all our diseases, it is in ANCA vasculitis. So I think we have to look at downstream rather than upstream.
Yeah, maybe another complement mediator will come which will work in lupus where it can be steroid sparing. Maybe
so,
because...
For example, there are some diseases like if you have TTP in the setting of lupus, eculizumab has been found to be useful. HUS, TTP like spectrum in lupus, that is where it has been found to be useful. I am not aware whether it has found use in other conditions. Probably it will be useful in hemolytic anemia, I am assuming from how it works in PNH.
Excellent presentations, and I have a very layman question, and something like we see and in lupus you have low complements. Does it affect any way the treatment which are complement targeted? I know it's a very simple thing I'm putting, but I'm curious.
Okay, so my answer to that question is, so like I said, the early part of the complements are protective. Okay, and if you have more complement conception, when you see that the blood level of C3, C4 is low, they are actually getting deposited in the tissue, and it is causing damage at the level of the tissue. Like I said, they thought this eculizumab would be a good target in lupus, but I don't think it has done as well in the trials, because there are many other pathways in lupus, as I think as compared to ANCA vasculitis, I think it is more complicated than that, and you need to hit the target downstream where that is the most relevant in pathogenesis. I think that could be the reason why, like for example in PNH, you know that the lytic pathway is the end. If you block that, you can prevent the disease. Okay, so that is why there is a lot of success. So you need to identify a target which is really downstream. This is my understanding. The expert panel, I will redirect.
Any thoughts on copy number variations?
Sorry?
Copy number variations, C4.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I did not cover that. So they have found this in C4. So C4 gene copy number variations can influence lupus. So if you have very low levels of C4, so one more thing. Now it is the term that is used, is called complotype. Like you say genotype, okay? So it is called complotype. So what they are looking at is all the genetic deficiencies which can affect the complement. So among that, and I have missed out, so this low copy number, having low C4 is another predisposition factor. It will work to the same thing. What I showed deficiency of C4, it's actually a summarized.
Thank you, Sandhya, for the excellent presentation.